Ever wonder why your brain won't let go of that cringe moment from 5 years ago? Today, we're diving into the dark science of regret, where outdated software meets evolutionary dark alleys, and why doing nothing may be the real villain. In 2025, neuroscientists confirmed something deeply unsettling. Regret is not just an emotion, it is a neurological ambush. When you feel regret, your brain's medial orbitofrontal cortex lights up like a warning siren. This region is associated with decision-making, reward evaluation, and, most importantly, re-evaluation of choices that did not go as planned. When regret hits, your brain temporarily suspends rational processing and locks you into an emotional feedback loop. It is as if your brain rewinds time and forces you to replay your failure on a mental projector, again and again. In those moments, it does not matter whether the mistake happened 10 minutes ago or 10 years ago. Your brain does not track time, it only tracks perceived errors. This neural regret loop is more than just discomfort. It is your mind demanding accountability in the most dramatic way possible. That sense of inner turmoil is your brain launching a full-scale psychological audit. It wants answers, and it wants them now. Regret is not just sadness with a fancier name. It is a sharp, intrusive emotion that screams, "You could have done it differently, and you know it." Unlike disappointment, which focuses on outcomes beyond your control, regret is deeply personal. It attaches blame directly to you. It is the psychological equivalent of standing in front of a mirror while your mind yells, "This is your fault." In psychological terms, regret is classified as a counterfactual emotion. That means it arises when you compare what actually happened with what could have happened if you had made a different choice. This comparison creates a mental itch that cannot be scratched. It nags, replays, and reopens wounds that might have otherwise healed. The most fascinating and slightly horrifying part? Your brain does not just remember the event. It reconstructs an alternate reality where everything went right, and then punishes you for not making it real. Think of it this way. Your brain is running outdated software, and regret is its way of flagging errors. Each painful memory is a system log screaming, "Critical decision failure, run diagnostic." Now here is where regret becomes a psychological thriller. In the short term, we regret actions. That text we should not have sent, the joke that went too far, the impulsive purchase that emptied our savings. These types of regrets sting sharply, but usually fade. The brain learns, adjusts, and moves on. But long-term, that is when inaction takes the throne. What you did not do, apply for that job, tell someone how you felt, take that risk, becomes the ghost that haunts your future. Research shows that while actions cause more immediate regret, inactions are the regrets that grow stronger over time. This is because inactions do not have a clear ending. They are stories we never started, roads we never walked. And because the mind cannot complete them, it keeps rewriting the what-ifs indefinitely. Decades later, you are more likely to regret what you avoided than what you attempted and failed. It is as if your brain stores these untaken chances in a dusty folder labeled unfinished business. And every now and then, it pulls it out just to remind you, you could have had more. This is not just memory, it is mental time travel, and your regret is the guide. Regret is not a flaw in your design, it is one of the oldest tools in your survival kit. From an evolutionary standpoint, the function of regret is brutally practical. Learn fast, or die faster. Imagine one of our ancestors eating a strange berry, getting violently ill, and then, fortunately, not dying. The discomfort, pain, and memory of that experience form a neural feedback loop that says, "Never do that again." Regret, in this light, is your brain's built-in error correction system. It forces you to analyze bad outcomes so you can avoid repeating them. That same mental process that now kicks in when you say something awkward on a date once helped early humans dodge infections, starvation, and predators. In fact, this mechanism is so essential that it became hardwired over millennia. That pang of regret after a mistake is not just guilt, it is evolution's way of yelling, "Update your decision-making protocol." And here is the twisted part. Your body helps enforce the lesson. When you make a bad decision, you might feel sick, lose sleep, or even develop physical stress symptoms. Your body, in effect, becomes a snitch, ratting you out for your own errors to ensure you never forget them. It is an internal surveillance system with one mission: prevention through pain. Regret is not just something you feel, it is something scientists can see. Through brain imaging studies, researchers have found that the medial orbitofrontal cortex, a region just above your eye sockets, lights up when humans experience regret. This area is responsible for evaluating outcomes, particularly ones that involve choices you could have made differently. When it activates, it is as if your brain is replaying the scenario and recalculating what the better move would have been. Even more surprising, this brain activity is not exclusive to humans. In lab studies, rats have shown signs of regret when they realize they made a suboptimal choice, such as skipping a better food reward. Their brain activity mirrored that of regret processing in humans, suggesting that even rodents have a primitive version of this emotional correction system, which, let us be honest, raises an interesting question. Should we start offering therapy to rats? Maybe call it ratacognitive behavioral therapy. At the very least, it proves regret is not just a moral emotion, it is a deeply biological one. Not all regrets are created equal. Psychological research shows that we tend to regret exceptional choices more than ordinary ones. This is known as the exceptionality effect. For example, imagine you always take the same route to work, but one day you decide to try a shortcut and end up in a fender bender. You would likely feel more intense regret than if the accident had happened on your usual route. Why? Because your brain singles out the unusual choice and frames it as avoidable. This effect connects directly to how our minds respond to perceived control. When we make routine decisions, the brain gives us more leeway. But when we deviate from the norm and things go wrong, we get punished harder mentally. It is like your brain has a courtroom in there, and the judge says, "You chose this path, and you blew it." This also explains why rare losses, like gambling all your savings and losing, hurt far more than consistent small failures. The brain treats rare, exceptional missteps as bigger threats and stores them more vividly. Slot machines exploit this mechanism beautifully. You pull the lever and almost win, a near miss. That single rare loss sticks with you longer than dozens of ordinary ones. It is not just bad luck, it is psychological trickery at its finest, tapping directly into the regret system your brain evolved to protect you. The irony: the more exceptional the event, the more unforgettable the regret. Not all regrets are created in isolation. Some of the deepest, most persistent regrets stem from relationships and moral failures, times when we hurt others, betrayed our values, or simply stayed silent when we should have spoken up. These regrets are not just cognitive errors, they feel like soul wounds. Social regrets, such as lost friendships, missed romantic opportunities, or unresolved family tensions, often linger because they are tied to identity and connection. You do not just regret what happened, you regret who you were when it happened. Interestingly, studies have shown a distinct gender pattern. Women are more likely to report regrets about romance, with approximately 44% citing romantic decisions as major regrets, compared to only 19% of men. This may reflect differences in social expectations or emotional investment, but the bottom line is clear. Regrets rooted in human connection cut deeper. Moral regrets also weigh heavily. Lying, cheating, or failing to act according to one's ethical standards creates a unique psychological burden. These are not just regrets of choice, they are regrets of character. There is a point when regret stops teaching and starts tormenting. That is when it becomes toxic. Regret tied to action, say yelling at someone or quitting a job too soon, can often lead to growth, reflection, and eventual improvement. It is part of the brain's learning curve, but regret tied to inaction is where things get sticky. It tends to linger, fester, and metastasize into mental quicksand. Why? Because there is no resolution, no closure. The mind gets trapped in endless loops of what-ifs and if-onlys. This is the ruminative cycle: shame, rumination, stuckness. First comes the sting of regret. Then your brain replays it on a loop, analyzing every detail with clinical precision. Eventually, the regret starts to define your narrative. It is no longer just something that happened. It becomes who you are. And when that happens, it stops being useful and starts being destructive. The very system that evolution designed to help you adapt turns into a psychological prison. But here is the twist. Regret can be rewritten. New research in cognitive psychology shows that how we interpret our regrets matters more than the regrets themselves. Psychologist Crystal Reek and her colleagues at Temple University found that people who reframe regret by seeing it as a learning opportunity or a necessary step toward a better outcome experience far less emotional distress. The memory still exists, but it no longer controls the story. One powerful method is called portfolio thinking. Imagine each decision in your life as an investment. Not every choice will pay off, and that is okay. A smart investor expects a few losses along the way. Similarly, you can buffer your regrets by viewing them as part of a broader life strategy. You learn, you adjust, you keep moving. The idea is not to eliminate regret. It is to use it as a compass, not a cage. Here is the revelation. Regret is not failure. It is feedback. It is your brain's way of flagging the moments that matter, the ones with emotional weight and meaning. But that does not mean you have to let it take the wheel. You can listen without surrendering. You can learn without reliving. So do not let your brain ghostwrite your life story with red ink and crossed out pages. Take the pen back. Regret can be a teacher, not a tormentor, if you are brave enough to rewrite the lesson. So next time regret shows up, reset the script. Say, thanks for the data, now I'm moving on. Your brain isn't evil, it's just buggy. But with a little mindset update, you can overwrite the self-hate logs.